Hi, I'm Jerika. I use she, her.
I am Air. I use he, him.
Hi, I'm the Drunk Phytologist, or DP, and I use she, her.
Welcome, guest, to Insight Check, where we delve into the dungeon of your bad decisions to rewind.
To
retrieve
remix.
To retrieve the treasure of wisdom.
Wisdom is good.
Yay!
Hello.
So this is Insight Check.
Yeah.
The three-headed monster.
Yes!
You're welcome. Alrighty, so we're gonna start off with a dungeon crawl.
I had been out of the game, and then the game found me and was like, why don't you call? You don't send me flowers anymore. And I was like,
did you ever send in flowers?
Don't judge the relationship I have with tabletop RPGs.
You did, but that's news to me.
Chris Perkins has a lot of floral arrangements just sitting out front of his home. So getting back into D&D, we've just gotten, all three of us here back into a campaign with RDMJ. And I was like, man, I need to get back on that good D&D stream content. So I've been listening to...
Yeah, you added me to this madness because you didn't need, and you needed more chaos, apparently.
Yes, there's never enough. There's never N+1.
Famous last word.
N plus madness.
There definitely is enough. If you've played with Duck, there's enough.
Okay.
There's a threshold wherein the chaos starts to turn into pain.
Welcome to our new segment, Duck Digs. Duck, if you're listening... You're not listening.
Just live your life, man. It's fine.
It's cool. You do you.
So you're going to talk about
Critical Role. Yeah, I'm catching back up on it. And one of the single best, I listened to it on my commute to work, and I was literally on the edge of my driver's seat for In Hot Water, which is the episode title, where they are alone causing shit on a pirate island, and it is just everything I want in a D&D adventure.
Yeah, that one is batshit
It is a very ludicrous situation that unfolds, but very enjoyable. High pressure, high tension. Half the session is them in initiative, but not necessarily in combat. And good times. Highly recommend. I mean, I don't know if you crazy kids out there are listening to this little Critical Role show, but it's a good one.
I recently have learned that a lot more people at my place of work play D&D than I ever knew before. And there is one woman that I work with who has, maybe last month started listening to Critical Role Season 2. And it's now a point of bonding. So
that's good shit.
I might have also recommended her some of our podcast episodes, and I also apologize.
Self-plug.
So,
No shit.
that's what we're doing now these days. There's also, I work in a place where there are public rooms for rent, and there's definitely a regular weekly D&D game going on. So that's super exciting.
Have you kind of looked, just in the doorway hello? Or,
no, I've not done unethical things. But
I probably would have given the sad puppy dog eyes and been like, hello, real people.
I
also
have
like
interacted with the people. One of the people who attend who is totally badass.
Nice.
So I'm super excited. Anyway, that is not my actual dungeon crawl. My actual dungeon crawl is the following. Let's say musical number. https://www.meeplemountain.com/news/dungeons-dragons2. Nope. I was on a roll. /dungeons-dragons-2-receive-name-change/ Dungeons and Dragons to receive name change! ! Go read this silly ass news story.
You sang a URL.
Yeah, I did.
We could have just run it through Bitly and made it a jingle, but you went full show tune, and I am here for it. Thank
Jazz
you.
Hands.
When in doubt, add jazz hands. It's fine.
It turns out .php did it.
So I actually have your story, Jerika, reminded me of a little thing that happened that I totally forgot about, but now I want to talk about. So I was on vacation and in the middle of nowhere, driving to go fishing, And we stopped in a convenience store, and I'm wearing my D&D shirt, which has like the original like cartoon characters like on it from the show.
Oh, yeah.
And the guy who's ringing us up is going, I love your shirt. I loved that show. I played first edition. And we had this huge and wonderful conversation. And I think I've convinced him to come back to 5th. Nice. Because he loved all the storytelling and stuff as a kid. But then when it got really number crunchy in 3 and 3-5, and especially 4, he's kind of like, you know. But his favorite was Bum 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 Ravenloft, which actually comes into my next actual dungeon crawl. So I just we recently started a game, us 3 knuckleheads and some other knuckleheads with your DMJ, playing students in Shambhala. Students. Anyway, and Jay was nice enough to play my homebrew bullshit. And let me be a plant person. Yay. But like an actual plant person. So this is based off of...
Are you Groot?
I am Groot, basically, yeah. But I am a they, them, because they are hermaphrodite. They will have both female and male plant parts. But also, it's always been kind of a pet peeve of mine that anything that was not like human or humanoid was we were just going to act like this is a human, but we're just going to say they look like this. And so I wanted to play them like an actual plant would. So they speak via...
Like plant would?
Yeah, like plant would. I didn't even realize that. Oh, no. Okay. So they communicate via smell. They do not speak in the classic sense.
I wafted a lot of vanilla.
But they can. A lot of vanilla, and lemon. Mm-hmm. So much lemon.
2 smells that smell great together.
Yes. As well as they can like write on a chalkboard and stuff, but I thought it would be sort of an interesting way to role play and make for some interesting things.
What was your favorite part?
My favorite part of the game so far is actually how everyone's interacting with my character. I thought that because my character would be quiet, that they would maybe be ignored or whatever, because they're somewhat otherworldly, but then everyone else's character seems to be sort of fascinated with my character, and especially because our mission is to help, like, save the forest. My character's name is Rain, is ending up being kind of a de facto leader without really wanting to. But it's making it fun. It's definitely fun. And all the other characters are sort of trying to figure out how to interact with this being and still be polite, even if that character doesn't understand certain societal, rules. Especially because Jerika's character Prue seems to love Rain and is in their personal space.
Yes. Prue likes vanilla and lemon smells together.
Yeah. And so it's in Rain's personal space, but Rain doesn't have a concept of personal space, so it's totally fine.
Yeah. There you go. Win-win. That is the dungeon crawl.
It done been crawled, y'all.
I am proud to present our newest, greatest, most amazing segment of all time. This is Pronoun Lowdown, y'all.
The Pronoun.
And wait for the music. All right, cool. Rock. Lots of cowbell.
Pronoun Lowdown. Pronoun Lowdown.
So I'm going to start and we'll go around the room. I am playing in a West Marches style game, which is, from what I understand, means that you start and end every session in the same place so that you can trade players out. And it's really easy. So we're in this inn on this place called Karam's Beach. It's all homebrew as far as I can tell. But I have decided to play a they, them. And it's a little bit more complicated. They are a M2F trans person. But currently they are they, them. And it's interesting. I've not played a non-binary character in D&D before, and so I'm doing my best to be as accurate and good about it as I can. Part of the impetus was the two characters that were developed before mine were men who were playing women, and I was terrified that there would be terrible stereotypes. So I wanted to show them how it would be done correctly, how someone could play not their gender correctly. But they're all fine and good and terribly kind people, so it wasn't a problem.
Cool.
Yeah, and I can definitely see where that would maybe a little bit, it's kind of hard to not assume, that maybe somebody, just because you see other people have biases and then you're just sort of afraid of inherent biases that people are going to have, but it's nice to be pleasantly surprised when everyone is trying really hard to get it right.
It was just, and I was just kind of like struck with the fact that it was two people who present as male, like choosing to be female. And I'm like, here comes.
You're worried it's going to be WoW tune, World of Warcraft tune thing, like, if I'm going to look at someone from behind all the time, it better be a chick. Kind of
like, I don't want that.
Yeah.
but again.
I'm glad they were rad. Yes.
Yeah, and I have a similar situation. So a friend of mine is playing in a sort of a podcast called Dungeons with Dudes, and they're in Barovia right now, and he's the only one that's playing a female character, and all of the players are male, but he purposely is playing as the dungeon mom and is hilarious, but also regularly is correcting people. So say like gentleman shit there, he's like, and lady, and making sure that everything's pronounced correctly. And if anyone says anything, that's somewhat off color, he's just like, you did not, like, you didn't just say what I thought you said, like something like that. And I'm really proud of him for that. But not making it so that, there's a big argument or anything or whatever. It's just sort of reminding people. And especially because, I used to play in campaigns with him for like years and years and years. And so that was always really important to him because his like very best friend is trans. That went from M to F, and so he said that this character sort of was inspired by her. And it was always been very important for him. And so that's always really nice to see.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and I wanted to sort of do a non-binary character. It is actually inspired by one of my good friends who's sort of going through that, although they are more asexual, and while we were all in college together. And
do you mean agender?
Agender, yeah. They say they're like, I'm not quite a girl and I'm not quite a boy. And some days I feel like a boy and some days I feel like a girl. And they cosplay a lot, and do different stuff like that. But they've been very big advocate for those who are non-binary and having a neutral bathroom at work. And their work has actually been really great about that, as well as for different rights of how you want to be addressed and those sorts of things. And their personality is kind of where I took from Rain's personality a little bit. And so, but, I got to sort of see this journey because we were all working on our degrees all at the same time, but we were all part of the same D&D group. So it gives you a little bit more perspective on when someone's sort of going through that and figuring out who they are and who they want to be.
Yeah, and D&D is a great venue because it is the world of imagination. And if you want to explore some of that and some of those thought processes and things like that, psychology, it's a space you can do that. And you can do it safely in most circumstances. So that's awesome.
Yes, we should say it should be a space where people can do that safely.
Yeah, that's the idea.
So
that's the idea.
And what people should strive for.
Yes.
I actually have one more pronoun news tidbit. Cover your ears if you don't want C-Team spoilers. I was incredibly, incredibly happy to see that New Cthulhu is using they, them pronouns.
Yeah, I actually really like that. I was wondering about that.
I didn't know if Chris was going to choose she pronouns or continue with he pronouns or what, but I think they actually makes a lot of sense. I was pleasantly surprised by that as well.
He posted on Twitter a conversation between himself and Amy from the C Team as well, talking about how, because again, spoilers, cover your sweet ears, listeners, if you don't want to be full of dim spoilers. But Amy's character had, I think, wished him into a new body, which was female instead of male, just, biologically. And he said that his character would be like, he was only using he because that was just the default that he had always experienced. But now that things are different biologically, physically, they realized that they was the correct one. So that kind of change sparked that. It was a really interesting conversation thread to see them kind of hashing that all out.
That is really interesting. Because I had some impression being, taking a Twitter hiatus for these many months. Woe is me. No, I'm just kidding. It's been great. Not knowing that tidbit you just shared, assuming, that maybe they were considering themselves more non-binary because of the experience they had before as being male and now having a female body. How are they going to reconcile that? But it sounds like maybe they were they all along. The they was inside them the whole time.
The friends are the
which is
they.
Fascinating.
That it's just going to completely have no meaning semantically. Just basically the kind of the enlightenment of like, I've changed biologically and people are already starting to assume things, but that's not how I want to be addressed. That kind of change, sparking that kind of understanding of self is very interesting.
Yeah, totally. Yeah. Love it. Ship it. Thanks, D&D. Or should I say D's and or D's?
D's and
or D's. And also it's an interesting thing to think about because even biological sex is not so black and white as everyone likes to make it out to be.
Oh, no way. Yeah. Depends on what develops when in the womb.
And also I'm taking for, since I do have I am a geneticist, anyone who's interested in that sort of thing, there is an excellent book that I read when I was younger called Middlesex.
Mm-hmm.
And
there's also a fiction book, but your book is probably better for information.
But it's sort of historical fiction. The person who wrote it is a person who is technically genetically male, but presented female. And was
so you're
raised
saying that
female.
the chromosomes are XY.
Y, right. But they were...
presentation is elsewise.
Right. So they were misgendered, actually, a bit. They just thought they were more of a, I would say, manly-looking woman, And so they changed, like, some of the names and things to protect people's identities, but this was sort of their life and sort of what they went through, And so because of that, gender and how you identify and how you perceive yourself, as well as what is happening biologically, isn't so, cut and dry as some people try to make it out to be, So I think it's best to, be able to be how you identify and want to be identified and stuff like that and what's comfortable for you, not so much as having genetic testing of whatever exactly or whatever, because that doesn't mean a whole lot because there's so many factors that go into biological sex as well as gender identification, things of that nature.
Socialization, all that.
Oh, yeah. And especially because this person was, raised as a woman because they presented as a woman, but was attracted to women and couldn't figure out if there was something really wrong with them or anything like that. But when they were not forced to dress or present or act like a woman anymore and didn't have to have all of these different therapies, then they started to present more like a man, how they wanted to be, seen. And so it's very fascinating, and I think it's a good read for basically anyone to have, especially if they're curious about persons who are not, quite one side or the other.
They're non-binary.
And are non-binary. Exactly.
This is my take on it. Why would three-dimensional beings confine themselves to one line of definition or a scatter plot of definition when really identities are three-dimensional and relate to each other in more than one, more than two, more than three directions.
Yeah, no, that's an excellent way to put it. It's a quantitative trait is the technical way of saying it. There is not one thing that makes you, there are very few of our genes that are actually one or the other. Most of our traits are quantitative. There are many, many genes which are involved to make you, and so even if something is
perhaps
simple,
every one of your genes.
As I said, there's
300 billion.
Yeah.
No, wait, you know exactly the number.
There's about 25,000.
There you go. Okay. Well,
ish.
I was over. I wasn't.
And 3 trillion base pairs, but we won't get into that because a lot of it's extra.
The story when mom meets dad and they danced all night. He took her home.
But there's only like a handful of traits that end up being one or the other. Like if you can roll your tongue, or you have a unibrow.
Oh wait, I need to know. DP, 2 questions. 1, are you aware of who Jonathan Colton is?
No.
Jonathan Coltrane.
I'm sorry.
Jonathan Colton is a nerdy, folky singer-songwriter.
A filker.
B, he has
Filthy filker.
B, he has an entire song about genetics that I think you would want to hear.
Under a rock and know nothing.
I will. It's okay. It's
You know nothing, drunk phytologist. Anyway.
I know nothing. Oh, that's Hogan's Hero. Sorry. I didn't get out of bed this morning. Only old-timey stuff, mainly because I was on vacation binge watching reruns of MASH. Anyway, everything is fine.
na 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 na. Did we want to move on to the question du jour?
Are we a podcast that sometimes answers your questions?
No, absolutely not.
Oh,
Only
okay.
by
Well, then
accident sometimes.
Let's throw this question right in the trash can.
Okay, there it goes. Recycling. We're trying to save the environment.
Well, it was only asked by one at Kate Welch.
So you've drank a lot of alcohol and it's burning your throat. That's the correct pronunciation of Kate Welch's
there's
name.
4 H's at the end of it.
Yeah, maybe she just likes farming.
4-H. That was really good, Jerika.
Yes, indeed.
4-H. Oh, Jerika. Okay, so Kate Welch, D&D designer extraordinaire, Rosie B. singer on the C team, and altogether great human, asked the following question on Twitter, and is the only question we are going to try to answer today. What's your favorite way to devise personalities for characters? PCs or NPCs? And go.
I would like to restate the question.
This isn't Jeopardy. What?
I'll allow it.
I'm going to answer this question. What is the enjoyment you get out of making a D&D character?
Ooh.
And, personality is part of that. But I am going to propose a hypothesis that I've tested. So it's actually a theory.
Okay.
The theory of lists of interest.
Okay.
Lists of interest. Okay, what is lists of interest?
Listrists.
Let me give you some examples. The first PC that I really enjoyed playing, her name was Jerika. What? That's not my real name? No, it's not. It's my first PC's name. She wasn't technically my first PC. She was the first PC I played for more than a year. Her list of interest, air quotes, was the beast list, and more specifically beasts with cool traits such as pack tactics, multi-attack, pounce, charge, whatever. And I actually wrote this list up by hand, and I could use it to basically be my my bag of tricks, if you will. Mm-hmm. So I could use it for roleplay, I could use it for combat, I could use it for exploration if I wanted. And it was basically like the tools that I had available to me. And I felt that like I was somehow discovering like a cool thing that nobody knew because like no one was like, here are the beasts that are the best beasts and you should only run these beasts. Whereas like I had seen lists that were like, here are the best spells. You should, you need to have these spells. Otherwise you'll die. Shatter. Anyway, magic missile. So it was really cool because like I felt like I could develop both the character and like the tools that I would use, the mechanics, sort of like myself. Like it was kind of like a DIY sort of thing, which was really fun for me. Okay, so that's one list of interests. Let me tell you a little bit more about that. So I found that having access to pack tactics through the beast form, wild shape, seemed pretty powerful. And I really wanted to play with that.
So much. And the only reason I'm going on about it is because my husband's character got a pet wolf and he breaks shit with him all the time. Yeah. All right, rant done.
I love wolves.
Continue.
I love dire wolves. They both have pack tactics and it's great. So the one that Jerika would use most often would be Giant Vulture. And it was a sort of tactic where she would cast Conjure Animals. She would conjure vultures. And then she would become a vulture with her bonus action. And then the next round, they could all get advantage on their attacks because of pack tactics. So that was something that really appealed to me and seemed more often than not to work out in my favor. So I got a lot of positive reinforcement for that one. At the end of the day, let me tell you, when we were fighting Tiamat, Jerika turned into a reef shark, had pack tactics. The monk summoned a ball of water so that I could breathe through my gills. And we wrecked shit. It was great. So anyway, so that's one sort of list of interests. Banna didn't have one specifically from the beginning. I didn't actually have like a concept sort of fleshed out for this until like maybe a couple months ago. So when I was making Banna, I was like, yeah, I'll be a barbarian and rage. That sounds fun. So, barbarian doesn't really have a list of interests. They rage. That's what they do.
They're interested in anger.
Yeah. Attack. But lucky for me, Jay gave me a list of interests. He gave me access to the item list of items less than 10 gold pieces.
That is true.
Through the Obviator bag. So this became Banna's list of interests, where she could basically summon items less than 10 gold pieces. And this led to really exciting things, such as Banna summoning a ram, jamming it down the throat of a cannon, exploding a ship.
Yep.
And saving the day from the changeling that was stealing our faces. Woo! Or the infamous slip and slide incident.
Slip and slide was very good.
Where Banna summoned a lot of soap.
I heard about this.
And we just slid down that hill, and maybe there was water. I think something was flooding, so there was water everywhere. So yeah. What else? I think Banna summoned some chains in a similar way and got the wings off of the final boss. That was a really great... Thanks, Jay. That was a really great addition, because I don't think I would have had as much fun playing Banna if it weren't for that list of interests provided, especially by you. Wink. Anyway, so just one more example, if you will.
I will.
Members of the high jury. Anyway, so now, currently, in this very moment, I am playing a rogue named Hesha Ova Diranos, They are they that I spoke
Clap,
of
clap,
earlier.
clap.
Their list of what?
Oh, sorry. It just sounded like Stella Ella Ola, so I said clap, clap, clap. Sorry.
It's okay. It's Hesha, like Kesha with an H. Anyway,
And a dollar sign?
And $2.
$2.
HE $$A. Anyway, so the list of interests that I've developed for Hesha is a list of magical items that once you have used them up, still retain some physical component. There are a lot of magical items that once you use all the charges or whatever, they just disintegrate or turn into dust, whatever. Burst into flame, I think one of them does. But there are a few, maybe 10 items, 15 items that retain some physical something after they are no longer magical. So this list is something that I use for Hesha because Hesha is a secondhand retailer of found items, whether they belong to them or not.
Hey, Sonny, what about a watch?
Gently used watch.
So they can obviously try to resell you sticks that don't have any magical components. There's a lot of quarterstaffs. There's at least 2 or 3 that might have been magical, post-magical item. There is a chime that cracks and then is no longer magical. There is a stone that turns into a 50 GP worth of prism, so that's cool. And there are maybe 6 to 8 books that just turn into mundane books. So Hesha basically runs this business where they find books on these specific topics and just hoard them, waiting 100 years, which is the time it takes for them to become magical again. So, and these are books on like wellness, dieting, strength training, these kinds of things. So whenever they find this type of book, they just like take it.
What if I need those in real life? Like, how do I do this?
Yeah, but in D&D it's magical sometimes.
Ah, dang, you couldn't hook me up there, I guess.
Sorry. So this is a list that I've had a lot of fun interacting with, and it really, to me, especially with Hesha, it lends to their personality because that's what they're really interested in, these items. So whatever else is going on, whatever other smaller type fetch quests are going on, or go negotiate here or fight here, they are really interested in finding these items, getting these items, and reselling these items. Okay, that's my philosophy.
It's definitely a unique way to make a character, is to figure out what their likes or drives or whatnot are, and then kind of pull from there. Kind of like it's an emergent way to create a character from general kind of concepts to out of them being mashed together steps forth this brave adventurer.
I mean, the rules kind of do this for you. Like the spell list is like an obvious list of interests that you're handed. You know, the list of your class's features is, you know, it's a list of interests. But for me, I like to kind of go off the beaten path and construct my own sort of list of things that go together.
Yeah, no, I do it a little bit that way too. I'm not so much into the making a character where it's like, this is the most optimal of whatever, you know, but it's like, I want to make a creative way of I start with the personality and I go, okay, what are they most likely to have, you know? I know that lots of people try to min-max and get the most out of their character.
We'll get to me, don't you worry.
So I don't have a lot of free time. So how I like to make characters is I take people I love, people that I've been good friends with, or interesting people I've met, and then I try to be like, okay, what would they be like in this place? You know, what would their profession be? If they weren't, you know, this, what would they be in a D&D setting? So, like, one of my favorite characters I ever made was named Yuli. She was a artificer, and she was based off of a really good friend of mine who is Black. She was born in Nigeria. Lots of incredibly intelligent, incredibly loving, totally kick your ass kind of kind of person, but also just, no nonsense type, and just, I would call them like like she is an unstoppable force, and so I always admired that about her, and so I'm like, I want to be that, because I don't necessarily feel that way all the time. So if I wanted to, explore that in D&D, I'm like, how do I make her, and how would I play her? And what would she be like in this sort of setting? And so that was sort of the inspiration for her. I have lots of other NPCs which are based off of either good friends or from characters from books, where I'll take different things and different attributes I like and sort of mix and match, and I'll draw it out where I'm like, okay, what's their motivation? What are they after? What is this weird thing they do, that they don't want anybody to know about? It's like they're super brilliant at this, but they're just crazy messy, and can't find anything, because I don't really like having, like, optimized so much where they are super great at everything. It's like, okay, that's like a movie or a fanfic, it's like in real life, everyone's got that weird thing, that they do that annoys everybody. And so you want to have that in because I feel like it makes it more real.
And sometimes that weird thing is the thing that makes you endearing and relatable to the party.
Right, exactly. Even when I was talking about my character Rain, Jay had asked me, it's like, oh, do you, because I said, I'm like, they don't speak and they would have maybe tremor sense, but they don't hear. They're going to have to read people's lips. He's like, well, do you really want that as a handicap? I'm like, I don't consider it a handicap. It's just a different way of communicating. You just have to be a little bit more creative about how you're doing things, just because their personality is a mix of my non-binary friend as well as like my husband's aunt who is deaf, and she's a nurse and does everything just fine, but she has to be looking at you and read your lips, be able to communicate with people who don't sign, even before she had her cochlear implant. And things can go wrong and there's not always a guarantee that it works well all the time, so you've got to adapt and move. But that doesn't mean you can't also be a badass.
Yeah, oh,
at
totally.
Basically everything.
Yeah, not mutually exclusive.
Exactly. It's like, that's why I like using the term differently abled, and it's one of the reasons, like, my blind player in my campaign, her druid is so awesome because she didn't have any preconceived ideas on, I've got to get the best spells and I have to have the best B shapes or whatever. It's like, no, I want to do this. I love the ocean, so my druid's going to be about the ocean. I don't care if we're not any near an ocean. Those are the spells I'm going to pick. Those are the shapes I'm going to pick. And
that's really
just gonna
fun
be how it is.
Because a lot of those shapes are like water breathing. And so you got to get real creative about that.
Oh, yeah, because then it was like, but anytime like there's a fire thing or whatever, like I had completely forgot about certain things. I'm like, oh, yeah, here's this big flame trap. And it's like, oh, yeah, but I have like this create water spell. I'm like, yeah, you do. Can I use that? Yes, you can. Okay, cool. While the fire's gone. I'm like, dang, good job. Yeah. Inside, I go, damn. But yeah, exactly. So like a lot of her spells weren't necessarily big damage ones, but a lot of like buffs where it's like enhance ability and run over here and do this and do that. And I've got Goodberry. And
have you ever played an inspiration while they were in the same game?
I'm sorry, would you, oh, like people?
Yeah.
Oh, like, Yeah, so I have a couple NPCs that are, I have one that's a little bit based off of my brother, and he has no clue.
Are you sure?
And I'm pretty sure because the NPC was sort of taken from one of our old campaigns. It was played by one of our friends and who has come in and stuff like that. But I think because my brother is playing a rogue right now, and it's so different than how he really is. And so he's been kind of focusing on that because his rogue is this super, super sticky fingers type. And in real life, my brother is like the most law-abiding, like rule-centered, big, huggy, giant teddy bear. And so I have a big, huggy, giant teddy bear NPC, and he has no clue that that's really him.
Gotcha.
Well, he doesn't listen to this podcast, so I can say this,
Yes,
so he won't be going like, what is it?
Do you think people would have bad reactions to it?
I haven't had that so much, but then again, everyone that I've ever played sort of with a home game or whatever, I've always been like really close to, and we always talked about those sorts of things too. But I'm sure that could be a thing, because there's been a couple times where someone has played either a little bit of like a self-insert or somewhat as like an NPC where it's like they do that one annoying thing that you do, but you know, because we all communicate, like it hasn't been a problem. I think communication is really important. So there's certainly been times where I've had like one of my characters like, I really don't like this character, like it makes me uncomfortable, you know, and I'm like, okay, well then we'll do something different, you know.
Yeah, totally.
And just adjust it or whatever. Because, you know, everyone's there to have fun, you know, and
gasp.
As long as gasp.
What an interesting.
Gosh, dang. What an interesting thing.
Treasure you've uncovered about D&D.
I know. I just can see past the veil. But yeah, so if there's any time where someone's like confused or they don't quite understand their deal or like whatever, you know, then we'll talk about it, because I try to check in with everybody and be like, okay, is this fine or whatever? Because like one of my latest NPCs, at first I thought they didn't like him, and then I found out that I just played him so that they love to hate him, which actually ended up being my goal, which was great. But I did have to check, because I'm like, is everybody okay with this? And they're like, oh no, this is great. I just hate him. I just hate that guy, you know? And so when eventually, you know, they got rid of him or whatever, they're like, yes, you know. But I double checked, because at first I'm just like, you know, I don't have to play it this way, you know, if everybody doesn't like it.
Well, as has been alluded to earlier, I tend to take...
Sorry for calling you out.
It's okay. I own it. It is who I am. I tend to take a more mechanical approach to things. I as Jerika knows, my characters aren't always the most original. Normally, they're a bunch of tropey bullshit, but that's okay. Basically, I will start with like a mechanic.
Hey, Air. Say it again.
But that's okay.
Yeah.
So I will start with a mechanical concept. Part of it is because I really like the nuts and bolts of D&D 5e. Part of it is that Jay runs some really scary combat encounters, and I don't want to die.
Yeah, totally.
And I wanted...
Now I'm afraid.
But see, here's the thing, DP. Sometimes if you please the tyrant, he lets you get away with shit.
Slip and slide.
Enter the slip and slide.
Man, this is sounding more and more like my last campaign. So my husband likes the nuts and bolts like you do, Air, you know. And it was the same sort of situation where it's if I appease the gods, maybe he won't destroy me.
I want to say that I was somewhat of a mix, maybe more so numbers than creative solutions. But in our last campaign, I do think my bard tried to pull off some bullshit sometimes. I think my bullshit the problem is when you have such quality bullshitters with you, the bar is very high. So like, you know, you have fantasy slip and slide on one end and you have me being like pissing off somebody at the library, and when he gets snippy, I use phantasmal force to make him think I threw a piranha at his face. And Jay was like, yeah, no, that doesn't work. I was like, listen, not all of us can think up slip and slide off the cuff. Okay. So
You give me soap?
yeah, when life gives you soap, you make slip and slides.
So can you tell me about your approach to Krog?
Yeah, so Krog, Krog, the half-orc barbarian rogue. Basically, the mechanical thing I hit upon was the barbarians, the berserker specialty, whatever they're called, subclass. You can do an extra attack with your bonus action, but that mechanic is normally tied to doing an attack with your normal action. And this is the only instance I could find where you didn't need to do that. You just got a free attack with your bonus action. And I thought, wow, so I could attack on my turn and then hold my action and attack on another turn and get sneak attack twice if I was a rogue. That's a neat idea, at least from a mechanical standpoint. And then I was like, well, okay, so if I make someone who does that, who are they? So that based on the world, the homebrew world we're playing in, I decided to be half orc. I think Jay's let me actually just be a full orc, even though I have all the half orky stuff. But
what is the line?
Really? I mean, you know, I wanted to figure out who he would be. So because we were doing kind of like we're all going to fantasy community college, or maybe it's fantasy Ivy League school. Jay makes it sound like,
I mean, I think that's the impression.
Yeah, Jay makes it seem pretty fancy.
It is university. Yeah.
So I wanted to play, because the last character I played was not necessarily a smart character, but a smarmy or socially conscious character, one that could talk his way out of things or into things, or used magic to get into or out of all situations. I wanted to play a character with no magic who was just dumb as posts. Just to kind of try that out. So that's kind of what I was like, okay, so this is a more martial class. He's really good at stabbing things. So he can be kind of the silly dummy who's somehow made his way through school. I think someone even asked in our first session, like, how have I gotten this far? And my answer was, my parents give a lot of money to this school. So that's
real.
And I've come up with other ideas, and normally they start with like multi-classing or something to push something, but inevitably they always lead to ideas about who is this person and how do I want to play them.
Yeah, it's almost in the opposite order, right? Like, how I like to do it is I have the personality first, and then I try to make the numbers match the personality, versus you're going to the numbers and are like, how do I make a person that fits this structure, and makes sense, but there's neither, never a wrong way to do it. Whatever way you like.
Unless you're not having fun, and then you're failing miserably.
Yes.
In many different ways.
Fun is the only finish line.
Exactly.
Indeed.
And I think Rain's going to be a little bit interesting for me, too, because they're based off of a character that I played for a little while that I liked, and they were kind of so it was in 4E, so they were called a warden, which is type of fighter class, so still kind of the same thing, but I usually have a type which is nerds. And Rain is not a nerd. So we'll figure this out, because there's part of my brain that'll be like, oh yeah, let's do it. Nope. Rain wouldn't do that. Rain doesn't know that. Rain doesn't care. Mostly doesn't care.
Yeah, I'm waiting for the time in our campaign when we get to the thing where it's like, oh, I know the answer to the puzzle. I don't know the answer to the puzzle. I can't say shit.
I have some kind of clues, and I'm like, oh yeah, and then it's just like, down DP, down, go back to the corner. Stop it. You're not at work, go away.
Well, this has been an amazing episode of Inside Check. I'd like to thank everyone that we usually thank, and especially you, the listener, for rating us a 5 on iTunes and other places where podcasts are sold. This podcast is free. We would like to thank Amy T. Falcone for our social branding and Vin Svept for their use of their intro and outro music, Never Stand Alone. Please join us next week. You can also find us in the meantime on Twitter at Insight Check Pod. And every so often on Twitch, twitch.tv/Insight Check Pod. Yeah.
And thank you, DP, for joining us this week to talk about the D's and the D's. Yes. Thank you. All right.
Okay, so I'm the Drunk Phytologist, also DP. You can find me on Twitters at Drunk Phyto, or I have a Facebook page at The Drunk Phytologist, and you can see me there, or you can actually...
Can you spell that for the people?
Drunk Phytologist? D-R-U-N-K. Phytologist is Phytologist. It means plant biologist, but sounds cooler.
Thank.
Answering your cues from our collective A's. This
was
Insight
Check.
clean and neat.
Boo doo ba doo ba doo boop doo boo boo. And then we push the stop button.